Started with a bottle of wine. Stupid, right? I was trying to be thoughtful. That morning, before either of us had even had our coffee, Sarah mentioned her company was hosting some kind of client dinner that night. I asked if I should tag along, mostly joking. She smiled. That polite little smile she uses when she doesn't want to say no directly. It's more of a work thing, she said. Small team plus a few board members. It's going to be kind of boring, honestly. You'd hate it. Maybe I should have left it alone. Let it be what she said it was. A dry corporate dinner I wasn't invited to. But the thing is, I used to be a part of those things. Not her work events, but her world. We'd celebrate together, decompress over drinks after long days, vent about the annoying people we each had to work with. Somewhere along the way, that faded. I didn't notice it at first. It's like when you live near a train station. Eventually you don't hear the sound anymore. But that morning, something about her tone made me realize I'd stopped being looped in. Not excluded exactly, just unnecessary. So after work, I stopped by that boutique wine shop near the river. The one she used to drag me to on Sundays after brunch. They had restocked her favorite. A Hungarian white blend she swore was the perfect dry wine. Crisp, with a quiet kind of citrus. I don't even like wine, but she always loved the way I remembered her favorites. Thoughtfulness used to mean something to her. I didn't plan on staying. I thought I'd drop it off at the host stand, maybe attach a note. Proud of you. Come home safe. Something short, warm, normal. That's all I wanted. Just to remind her I was there. Still here. The restaurant was one of those modern places with too much mood lighting and nothing on the menu under $30. All stone, steel, and glass, the kind of place that makes you whisper even if you're not sure why. I parked across the street and carried the wine carefully by the neck, walking fast because the December wind cut through my coat like it had an agenda. As I stepped into the front lobby, the cold air followed me in, along with a gust that made the glass doors swing back too hard behind me. The hostess looked up, startled, then gave a tight smile. She wore a black dress and an earpiece, the kind that made her look like she was coordinating a fashion show instead of reservations. "Hi," I said, pulling the bottle from the paper bag, trying to explain. "I'm just dropping this off for..." And then I saw them. Not directly. Not at first. It was the reflection in the glass. Not the door I'd come through, but the tall, paneled wall to my left, where you could see everything behind you if you stood in just the right spot. In that reflection, I saw Sarah step out of a black car. She was laughing. Not the forced kind she gives during Zoom calls or when she wants to exit a conversation politely. This was real, her head tilted back slightly, eyes bright. Stopped me cold. Then the man next to her got out. Mark. Her mentor. He'd been around for maybe a year. Older, confident, the kind of guy who wore tailored suits without looking like he was trying too hard. She talked about him occasionally, mostly in a professional tone. "Mark thinks I should take lead on this." Or, "Mark says I have potential for promotion next quarter." Stuff like that. But in the reflection, she turned to him, fast, like it was second nature, and adjusted his collar. Not a quick fix. A slow, almost an asterisk mate smoothing of fabric. Her hand lingered on his chest for just a second too long. Then something worse. He reached out and brushed her hand. Barely. Light as a whisper. My stomach dropped. It wasn't overt. Nothing that would have screamed affair in a court of law. But in my gut, I knew. There's a language people speak when they've crossed a line. The proximity. The familiarity. The ease. Then she saw me. I don't know how. Maybe she caught my shape in the glass, the outline of my coat. Maybe it was instinct. Either way, her eyes locked on mine in the reflection. And she didn't flinch. She didn't jerk back or pull away. No panic. No guilt. Her body barely moved. Only her expression shifted. A subtle, chilling change. Like a screen being wiped clean. 1 second she was soft, laughing, casual. The next, she was all business. Calm. Controlled. Like I'd imagined everything. She said something to Mark. He turned slightly, but not enough to see me. Then they both walked in. The hostess was still talking, asking if I wanted to leave a message with the bottle. I couldn't respond. I set the wine on the counter and walked out without saying another word. At home, she acted like nothing happened. I waited, didn't confront her right away. I wanted to see if she'd bring it up, mention seeing me, explain the scene, something. But when she came through the door later that night, she dropped her coat on the hook, kicked off her shoes, and gave me a quick peck on the cheek like every other night. "Dinner was actually okay," she said, pulling a hair tie from her wrist. "Mark gave this long speech, you would have hated it. But the food was great." "I'm exhausted." I just nodded. "Did you eat?" she asked, heading toward the kitchen. "A little." I was waiting for her to say something. Anything. My chest was tight, heart pounding like I was still standing in that lobby. But she just poured herself water, took out her earrings, and scrolled through her phone like the day had been completely ordinary. So finally I said it. "Hey, I was near the restaurant earlier. Thought I'd drop off that white you like. Saw you outside." She froze for half a second, almost imperceptible, then looked up, surprised but not startled. "Oh, really?" she said, setting her phone down. "I didn't see you. I saw you. With Mark." "Oh, yeah, he had lint on his jacket or something. I was just fixing it." She said it so smoothly it took me a second to respond. "I thought it looked kind of int asterisk mate." She smiled, almost pitying me. "It was probably just a weird angle. You know how reflections can distort things. You probably caught a bad moment. We were literally just arriving. Nothing happened." And then she looked at me, directly, steadily. No defensiveness, just calm assurance, the kind people use when they've already rehearsed the conversation in their head. "It was work, babe. You don't have to read into it." She wrapped her arms around me, kissed my cheek again, and went upstairs. And I stood there in the kitchen, not knowing whether I was going crazy, or if she was just that good at making me question what I knew I saw. But I did see it. I saw everything. If you'd asked me the day before that dinner whether Sarah was cheating, I would have laughed. Not because the idea was impossible, but because it felt so far removed from the version of our marriage I thought we were living in. I believed in her, trusted her judgment, trusted us. I had always assumed that if something was wrong, she'd tell me. We used to be good at that, communicating before little problems had the chance to become big ones. Somewhere along the line, that fell apart without either of us noticing. Or maybe I noticed and chose not to see it for what it was. But after that night, every memory I had of the past few months came crawling out of the corners where I'd shoved them. What I'd previously brushed off as coincidence or stress or a rough quarter at work suddenly looked different, sharper, more intentional, like puzzle pieces I'd been holding upside down finally clicked into place. It started with her working habits. For years she'd been the queen of remote work, bragging about how she didn't need an office, how creativity struck harder at home, in pajamas with her hair in a bun and her laptop surrounded by 5 empty coffee mugs. But then, out of nowhere, she said she needed a creative studio, across town, 40 minutes away, with rent more expensive than her car payment. She claimed she needed a new environment, a professional vibe, more separation between work and home. But when I asked if I could stop by sometime, maybe bring her lunch, the answer was always oddly specific. "Not today, Mark's team is using it," or "It's too messy right now," or "I'm barely there today, I'm hopping between meetings." She said it casually, but her eyes never quite met mine. It wasn't a lie I could prove, but it wasn't a truth I could feel either. Then there was her wardrobe. For years she lived in sweatshirts and leggings, comfortable, soft things she wore while pacing the hallway brainstorming ideas. Suddenly, she started dressing like she was interviewing for a position at a company she already owned. Hair professionally styled, nails always done, heels she hadn't touched since our engagement party, clicking through the house as if she needed to announce she was leaving. Expensive perfume in the air before she even stepped into the room. Jewelry she hadn't worn in years gleaming at her wrists and collarbones. When I teased her about it, she said she wanted to feel more put together. But it wasn't about feeling put together. It was about who she was putting herself together for. And the phone. God, the phone. Once upon a time, she left it everywhere. On the kitchen counter, on the couch cushions, on the bathroom sink for hours, while she showered and filled the room with steam and off-key singing. She used to hand it to me without thinking, "Order yourself food while I finish this call?" Or, "Can you read that text? My hands are covered in flour." She treated it like an object, not a vault. Then suddenly, the phone became a limb she couldn't detach from. She kept it face down, always, even at night. Even when she'd come out of the shower wrapped in a robe, she'd reach for it like someone reaching for oxygen. If I walked into a room unexpectedly, she locked it so fast I could practically hear the screen gasp. And maybe the worst part wasn't what she hid, but what she erased. Our shared photos started disappearing, entire albums just gone. Memories I hadn't downloaded yet wiped away. She claimed the cloud glitched. Sure. Then the playlists we'd made together, our playlists, our road trip soundtracks, our anniversary mix vanished from her account. The family calendar we used religiously to plan everything from dentist appointments to weekend getaways suddenly cleared out. Blank squares. No color-coded notes. No reminders. It was like our future plans had been erased along with our past. Her mood started swinging, too, in ways that didn't make sense until they made all the sense in the world. Some nights she walked through the door glowing, warm, talking fast, hugging me with a softness that almost made me believe she still loved me the same way she always had. But other nights she came home drained, cold, emotionally absent, like her energy had been used up somewhere else, in some other version of her life that she returned from reluctantly. At the time, I thought these were just stress fractures, the kind people get when they're overworked or overwhelmed. I offered support. I offered space. I offered patience. I never imagined I should have been offering a mirror so she could watch herself rewrite our marriage without telling me. But looking back, the signs were impossible to miss. I think I didn't want to admit what they meant, because admitting it meant acknowledging I wasn't enough to keep her anchored. Or worse, that she didn't want to be anchored anymore. Then there were the little things. Tiny moments that didn't look important until I held them up to the light of that night at the restaurant. Like the time she came home late and said she'd been stuck in traffic, but her hair was windblown, not flattened the way it gets after sitting in a car. Or the morning she left wearing a scarf I had never seen before, and when I asked where she got it, she shrugged and said it was old, even though the tag was still attached. Or when she started humming songs I'd never heard her listen to, or laughing at inside jokes I wasn't part of, or talking about Mark's team as though she belonged to it or to him. But I think the moment that really haunts me came 2 weeks before the dinner. We were eating breakfast. She was stirring her coffee absent-mindedly, barely tasting the toast she'd made. She looked tired, not physically but emotionally, like someone who'd been running 2 lives at once and was starting to lose track of which one she was supposed to be in. I said, "You okay?" She blinked, almost startled. "Yeah. Why?" "You seem somewhere else." She smiled too quickly. "Just tired." But she wasn't somewhere else. She was with someone else. Everything I'd ignored, everything I'd brushed off as nothing. It all came back to me in waves, each one hitting harder than the last. The truth wasn't a spark. It wasn't a single moment of doubt. It was a system she had built slowly, quietly, brick by brick, until she had a second life running parallel to mine. And I realized, with a heaviness I still can't describe, that I had been living in only one of those lives. The day I found the truth, I wasn't even looking for it. I wasn't snooping or digging or doing anything dramatic. I just needed to print something, that was all. A simple insurance form I'd forgotten to submit. The kind of task that normally takes 5 minutes and 0 emotional fallout. But that morning, the universe decided 5 minutes wasn't enough. It wanted to watch my world unravel in real time. Our old tablet had been sitting in the drawer by the dining table for months, maybe longer. It was the one we used back when Sarah didn't treat her phone like a nuclear launch device that had to remain in her possession at all times. Before passcodes, before biometric locks, before all the sudden boundaries she put between her world and mine. I grabbed it because my laptop was updating. Another one of those small, stupid inconveniences that shouldn't have meant anything. When the tablet powered on, I half expected it to freeze. But instead, the home screen blinked into view, bright and innocent, and then her email app opened automatically. a relic of a time when we shared devices and passwords and trust. At first, the screen looked normal. Promotions, newsletters, random receipts from places we'd ordered from months ago. I was scrolling without intent, just passing time as the printer warmed up. Then I saw a name, Mark, not in the subject line, in the sender field. My chest tightened, but I told myself it was probably work-related. They exchanged emails. That was normal. Nothing wrong with that. But there were a lot, more than I'd ever seen before. A thread going back months. Some unread. Some marked important. I tapped one. And then the world shifted. It wasn't vague. It wasn't misunderstood. It wasn't a strange angle, or a bad moment, or whatever other excuses she'd fed me. These were explicit messages, not in a graphic way, but in a way that left no oxygen for denial. Words that didn't belong in a marriage. Plans that didn't include me. Jokes and references I didn't understand because they weren't meant for me. Affection dressed up as professionalism, then slowly undressed as the months went on. One line hit me so hard I had to sit down. Last night was perfect. I wish mornings didn't have to feel like sneaking out of a dream. I stared at it. Read it again. And again. My hands were shaking, but not with anger, at least not yet. It was something else. A numb disbelief, like my brain refused to accept what my eyes were processing. Another message from her. I can't stay long today. He'll notice if I disappear too often. Me. I was he. An obstacle, not a partner. The attachments came next. Thumbnails lined up like a row of bullets waiting to be fired. The first photo was her sitting on our couch, wrapped in my old hoodie, the one she always teased me for keeping. Her smile was soft, private, the kind she used to give only me. Except the angle was wrong. Taken from across the room by someone who wasn't supposed to be there. The second was her in the kitchen, holding the birthday mug I'd given her. The one that said, "Home is wherever I'm with you." Except she wasn't with me. She was with him. And behind her, slightly visible in the oven door's reflection, was a blurred shape, a man's silhouette. Tall, broad, familiar. My breath caught. This wasn't a spontaneous mistake. Not a moment of weakness. Not something that happened once and spiraled. This was a structure, a system, a life she had built deliberately, brick by brick, lie by lie, until she had a second home inside the home we shared. I opened another email. Next time, let's use the studio. It's safer than the house. The studio. The one she insisted she needed. The one she told me was unbearably messy every time I offered to bring lunch. It wasn't messy. It wasn't crowded. It wasn't full of meetings. It was where she lived her other life. The printer beeped behind me, its little chime absurdly cheerful. I didn't move. I felt like someone had pressed pause on the world, leaving me in a suspended moment where everything was still except my heart, pounding in my throat, making it hard to breathe. There's something no one tells you about discovering infidelity. It's not loud. It's not explosive. It's quiet, devastatingly quiet. A hush falls over you, inside you, as if your body is trying to protect you by muting everything, including your ability to react. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the tablet across the room. I just sat there, stunned, holding a device that suddenly felt radioactive. Eventually, I started printing the emails. Not the ones that felt like knives. Just the ones that showed intent, pattern, choice. I didn't know why I was printing them. Maybe to convince myself this was real. Maybe because some part of me knew I'd need them later. My hands were steady, calmer than they had any right to be. When the last page came out, I stacked them neatly. The domestic neatness of the act made me feel sick. Everything around me looked exactly the same. The table, the chair, the mug I hadn't washed yet. But everything inside me had changed. I closed the tablet and placed it on the counter gently, like I was afraid it would shatter if I set it down too hard. Then I stood there for a long time, staring at nothing, listening to the clock tick. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Time didn't make sense anymore. Minutes felt like hours. Hours like seconds. My brain kept replaying the collar-fixing moment at the restaurant, but now it wasn't a glitch in the reflection. It was a preview of a movie I didn't know I'd already been cast out of. And then something inside me hardened. Not anger. Not yet. Something sharper. Colder. A clarity that felt like stepping out of a fog and realizing you've been walking blindfolded through your own house. I understood something in that moment. This wasn't a betrayal that happened to me. This was a betrayal that had been carefully engineered around me. And she had assumed I would never see it. That assumption was her only mistake. You don't plan for moments like this. You don't rehearse how it'll feel to end something that was once the center of your world. I always thought if my marriage ended, it would be in fire. Shouting, door slams, broken dishes. But when the time came, it wasn't fire. It was frost. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't ask her to explain herself, because deep down, I already knew everything I needed to know. The emails were still sitting where she left them, fanned out on the nightstand, as if she couldn't bring herself to touch them again. I didn't either. I let them sit there in the open like an exhibit. I wanted her to feel their presence every time she walked past. A quiet kind of justice. She didn't deny anything, didn't cry, didn't even apologize. Not really. She just watched me move through the house like I was an employee clocking out for the last time. I didn't make a scene. Instead, I became mechanical. I started with her closet, folded every sweater she left on the shelves, sorted her shoes into rows. Heels she hadn't worn for years, flats, the boots she wore on our honeymoon. Everything went into the suitcases she once used for conferences. Her chargers, her curling iron, her journals. All of it disappeared from our space, repacked and categorized, until the house stopped smelling like her. I didn't throw anything out. I wasn't interested in revenge. I just wanted her out. I kept the things that meant something to me, not because I wanted to hold on, but because I couldn't stand the idea of her taking parts of our history into her new life with Mark. If she was going to start over, it wouldn't be with memories she didn't deserve anymore. I left the photo albums. The real ones, the ones we made before we got so busy we forgot to print pictures. I left the notes she'd written me back when words still meant something. I even left her old hoodie, the one she stole from me the night I proposed. She didn't wear it anymore, but it didn't feel right to pack it. It was hers. It belonged to a different version of her, one I didn't recognize anymore. I changed the passwords to everything, the Wi-Fi, streaming services, our shared bank logins, the calendar, the grocery app, the emergency contacts. She didn't ask for access again. She didn't even try. That was what hit the hardest, the quiet, the complete, suffocating quiet that followed. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She just watched from the hallway while I erased her from the home we built like it was the most natural thing in the world. No fight, no resistance, just resignation. The only words she said that day were, "Do you want me gone by tonight?" I paused, thought about it. "I want what you left behind to match what you've already done," I said. "You haven't been here in a long time. Your body just hadn't caught up." She nodded, eyes low, and turned back to the guest room. I left the envelope on her side of the bed, this time with only one line written at the top of a fresh page. "We both know this isn't the first time, but it's the last time you'll do it to me." Because the more I sat with it, the more I realized. This wasn't new. Maybe Mark was new. Maybe this exact version of betrayal had its own timestamp. But the lies? The secrets? The way she moved through the world like accountability was optional? That had been there for a long time. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I used to think silence was peace. That if we weren't fighting, we were okay. But what I didn't realize was that silence can be just as violent. It can choke the air out of a home, can hide things you don't want to admit. And eventually, it becomes the only thing you recognize. The first night after she left, I sat on the living room floor surrounded by half-empty boxes. Her side of the closet was bare. Her perfume no longer lingered in the bathroom. The mirror by the door was clean, without smudges from her hurried mornings. And still, the house didn't feel empty. Felt relieved. That shocked me. I expected grief. I expected a breakdown. Instead, I felt like I could exhale for the first time in months. like I'd been carrying around a weight that had been slowly *ling me, and finally, someone had lifted it off my chest. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not family. Not friends. I needed space to feel it without other people's voices muddying it up. Without the pity or the judgment or the well-meaning advice that always starts with maybe she just and ends with you deserve better. I didn't want commentary. I wanted clarity. So I moved through the week like a ghost. I went to work. I answered emails. I ate food that didn't taste like anything. I took long showers. I stared out the window for no reason. I walked around the neighborhood and didn't make eye contact with anyone. And in between all that, I processed the erasure of a life I thought we were building together. I sat with old photos, not to torture myself, but to understand where it all shifted. I read the birthday cards she wrote me, searching for cracks between the lines. And I replayed every conversation we'd had over the last 6 months, looking for signs I had ignored because I wanted to believe in her more than I believed in my own instincts. That's the cruelest part of betrayal. It doesn't just damage your relationship with the other person. It damages your relationship with yourself. It makes you question your memory, your perception, your judgment, your value. And once that seed is planted, it doesn't go away easily. But still, there was no rage, no storm, only the kind of stillness that follows a finished story. Because that's what it was now, finished. The love didn't end with a bang. It eroded quietly, day by day, choice by choice, until one morning I realized she was already gone. She just hadn't packed her things yet. So I packed them for her. Not out of cruelty, but because she didn't deserve the *Macy of a goodbye. She got to walk away from everything first. She got to write her new chapter in secret. She got to live 2 lives while I held up the weight of one. So when it came time to end it, she didn't get closure. She got boxes. That was my closure. When she returned to collect them, I wasn't there. I left her key under the mat and took a long drive upstate. No destination, just distance. I didn't want her face to be the last thing I saw in that house. I didn't want another version of calm lies and hollow apologies. I didn't want to hear, I didn't mean to hurt you, or it just happened, or I didn't know how to tell you. She knew how. She just chose not to. When I came back late that night, the boxes were gone. Her key was on the table. The envelope was gone too. And in its place, nothing. No note. No final message. Not even an attempt to reshape the ending. She vanished like smoke. Easy to make, impossible to grab. And all that was left in the house was air. Quiet, clean, honest air. For the first time in over a year, I could hear my own thoughts again. And none of them were about her. After she picked up her things, she vanished. Not in the dramatic way you see in movies. No block numbers, no frantic calls. No, we need to talk texts at 2 a.m. She just stopped, went silent, offline, disconnected from every shared app, unfollowed me on everything. As if I were the one who betrayed her and she needed space to heal. It was strange how fast she became a stranger. I didn't reach out. Not once. There was nothing left to say. I'd already had my conversation, the silent one, the real one, the one she read on a single printed page. I imagined her sitting on the edge of the guest bed with that letter in her hands, rereading it 3 times, maybe 4, then folding it into a pocket she'd eventually forget to empty. Or maybe she tossed it into the trash without finishing it, like all the small truths she'd discarded over the last year. Either way, it didn't matter. The story was already over on my end. But a few days later, she reappeared. Not in my inbox. Not at my door. Online. First, it was an Instagram story. Sunrise through a foggy window. Tea steaming beside a novel she'd never once mentioned during our relationship. Filtered just enough to feel unreal. The caption read, "Growth isn't pretty, but it's still growth." No mention of the marriage she'd burned down. No sign of regret. Just rebranding. A repackaged version of herself. Finding peace. Letting go. Becoming whole. All posted on social media for strangers to double tap and comment. "So proud of you, yellow heart. You're glowing girl. Love this journey for you." Felt like whiplash. I was still untangling years of shared routines, and she was out there posting about boundaries and healing as if she'd survived something traumatic, not caused it. I watched quietly at first. I told myself I didn't care, that it was just noise, that I wouldn't let her version of things rewrite what actually happened. But the truth is, it got under my skin. It stayed there, because no one knew. Her friends didn't know. Her followers didn't know. The people leaving supportive comments didn't know she left our relationship like a thief exiting through the side door. Not because she was brave, but because she was already halfway gone. She was painting herself as a phoenix rising from ashes. Without mentioning, she lit the match herself. She started posting more. Pictures of books stacked on nightstands, candles, sidewalk cafes, long captions about relearning her worth and choosing joy, always carefully lit, always vaguely profound. She spoke about her healing era, like she was the victim of something unspeakable, like she hadn't made deliberate decisions to destroy what we built, as if she needed the sympathy of strangers more than she ever needed honesty with me. I never commented, never messaged. I didn't even screenshot *T, but I remembered every word. And the worst part? It worked. People bought into it. The ones who didn't know the full story, which was almost everyone, started liking, reposting, even quoting her. She leaned into this new identity like a role she'd always wanted to play. The woman who got out, found herself, and never looked back. A survivor of unnamed wounds. An icon of moving on. She left out the details, the hotel keys, the emails, the window she cracked open just in case. I stayed quiet, not because I didn't have receipts. I had them all. But I didn't want to play that game, the public performance of heartbreak. I didn't want my healing to be content. Still, her silence toward me, paired with her voice online, felt like a slap. She didn't text to say sorry, didn't email to explain, didn't ask how I was doing. But she had time to post about how solitude can feel like strength instead of abandonment. She had time to tag the therapist she'd started seeing 2 weeks after I found the emails. She had time to make herself into a brand of strength she never showed when it mattered. And suddenly, our story, the one filled with real moments and real failure and real hurt, was being overwritten by this softer, more polished narrative where no one was wrong and everyone just grew apart. A story that made her look strong and complex. A story that made me invisible. I didn't need her to take all the blame. I just wanted the truth to matter. But in the age of curated grief, truth is whatever gets the most engagement. Whatever reads best as a caption. And that's what she became, a caption. Not a person. Not a wife. Not even a former friend. Just a curated feed of emotional detachment with aesthetic lighting. I muted her accounts. Not because I was bitter. Because I was tired. Watching her live out a performance while I was still sweeping up glass from the life she shattered was exhausting. I needed silence again, real silence. Not avoidance. Not edited stillness with hashtags. Just nothing. Around that time, mutual friends started reaching out. Carefully. Tentatively. Some asked how I was. Some pretended they were just checking in. But I could tell they'd seen her posts. Heard her side. Or at least the version of it she allowed to be public. I kept it simple. We split. It wasn't mutual. I'm moving forward. One friend, someone who'd known both of us since college, replied with, "That's not what I heard, man. You sure?" I didn't respond. Because no, I wasn't sure in the sense that I had a courtroom transcript or a confession video or a press release from her PR team. But I had something better. I had timestamps, email headers, photographs with reflections. Details she forgot would last longer than excuses. And one night, about 2 weeks after she first posted about her new life, something strange happened. A photo of her appeared on someone else's story. A guest at the same dinner where I first saw her with Mark. The *T was blurry, taken quickly. But there she was, stepping out of a car with him. His hand lightly on her back. Her gaze soft. Her mouth mid-laugh. It looked exactly like what it was. Closeness that wasn't professional. The story was up for maybe a minute. Then gone. I don't know if someone told her. If she saw it herself and panicked. But it disappeared so fast I almost thought I imagined it. Almost. Later that same night, she posted a new caption. Sometimes people just grow apart. There's no villain in the story, just two hearts learning they beat to different rhythms. I stared at it. No villain. No mention of the affair. No mention of the lies. No mention of the way she we *p* nies silence to escape accountability. Just poetic nonsense. Rhythms. Hearts. Growth. She wasn't just rewriting our ending. She was erasing me from the narrative entirely. Word spread, not the truth, but her version of it. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months messaged me like I was the one who'd disappeared. They'd clearly heard her story. Clean, balanced, almost noble. The kind that makes both sides sound like victims of time, not choices. One mutual friend sent me a now-deleted screenshot *T. A photo of her and Mark outside the restaurant. Her smile, his hand. It was undeniable, but she buried it fast. Replaced it with a quote about forgiveness and honoring endings. She crafted a public breakup so tidy it could have been copy-pasted into a self-help blog. In that version, there was no betrayal. Just a brave woman reclaiming her life from a love that had simply faded. And in that story, I didn't even exist. Weeks passed. Then she asked to meet. No context. Just, can we talk? Curiosity won. I agreed. We sat across from each other at a cafe we used to visit. I placed the envelope between us, the same one with the printed emails. She didn't deny anything. She didn't cry. Just read quietly. No questions. No excuses. It felt like the last page of a book neither of us wanted to keep. I paid the bill. She didn't stop me. I stood up. She stayed seated. That was it. I changed my number the next day. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. She stayed behind, in the life she chose, rewriting a story that no longer belonged to both of us. Just her.